Welcome to IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Don.
Coming at you live from San Francisco, California.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
All right, greetings everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Daniel Lowry, and in today's episode, well, prepare yourselves, because we're back with more, an A+, that's right. And actually taking a further look into mobile network connectivity. Very cool stuff in there. Wes is joining us today, our good man, Mr. Wes Bryan. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Great to be here. That's right. We are moving on in, well, like Dan said, connectivity, email, and things like synchronization. And you know what's interesting is, well, we haven't gotten into the email part or the synchronization. We took care of the networking.
We'll get to that.
That's right. We took care of the connections, right, in the first one. Connectivity, we talked about some of the different types of connections. So if you're not aware of that, go back and watch it, as you might be supporting these at home right now, or maybe even in your own business environment. And definitely, like Dan mentioned, studying for that 22902 exam. Now we're going to move into the email, right? We're going to talk about, well, one of the most important things inside of mobility and mobile devices is, well, how we send and receive our email and the applications that we use and some of the configurations, so that if they do give you any kind of scenario, that you'll know how to do even some basic installation and configuration of those communications. Now, when it comes to corporate email and ISP email configuration, this is really going to depend on, you know, what the settings are. Like, for instance, your internet service provider might require you to use things like POP3, Post Office Protocol version 3. Remember that when you do get that configured, and especially for the exam, remember that is going to be over port 110, right? If my ISP says, here is our POP3 server, and these are the settings, understand that you configure the ports to port 110. If it's IMAP, which is another common one, remember the Internet Message or Mail Access Protocol, remember that is going to be your port 143 as far as the communication types and when you go to configure it. However, you might be configuring things like, you know, commercial providers. It could be something like Exchange, it could be something like Outlook.com. And I have to tell you, today, in today's day and age, you might have an on-premise Exchange server, but even more so, you might have Outlook.com, which is in the cloud. So you really have to pay attention to that, because we talk about data synchronization, talk about the local desktop versus the cloud providers. Keep in mind that if you're using a cloud provider, that means you're using software as a service. You're probably using something like Outlook.com. You're using something like Google, if you will, to do your email. However, if you're using Exchange, that means you could be using things like POP3, where you're going to pull that information down to the desktop and you're going to erase that copy off the server. So keep in mind, it really depends on what your, you know, what are you talking about, right? Are you talking about a corporate enterprise environment? Is it going to be a cloud interface? Is it going to be a local desktop interface? Or is it going to be an ISP configuration?
Interesting thing about this, Wes, is that this is probably the most wanted feature in mobile devices. Also can be the most frustrating feature for administrators and mobile devices. I can't tell you how many devices you click, oh yes, I want an Exchange account. There you go, there's all the settings. Oh, why aren't you working? You know, it's not working. You have to go through it a million times and finally it starts to work. Plus there's a little bit of a, I've noticed, well, at least there might not be, it might be a little bit better now, where there's a bit of a synchronization issue, where it can take a little time before things actually start working really well. So you just got to be prepared for that. And that's real life land kind of stuff, not necessarily for the exam, but my experience with it.
Yeah, Dan, three of the most annoying things sometimes in computing is drivers, printers, and then, of course, last but not least, I guess in no specific order there, is email as well. So it can definitely be problematic. I do want to mention the other thing, too, with business email is that port settings, SSL settings, you might have to set things like secure socket layer as well as SMIME, the secure multimedia internet mail extensions. Fancy acronym for essentially securing your emails. Uses a combination of public key cryptology and encryption, essentially to scramble your email, so that if you send it to, an email to somebody, that only the owner of that email, the person that you're in, basically keeping it encrypted so that only the authorized person can be able to view that. Now, other things that you might have to look at too are integrated commercial providers and do email configuration and things like data synchronization. Let me go ahead and we'll quit talking so much here and we'll actually dive into more of some of the settings. So here on my desktop, I've got, again, our iPad on one side, you know, running iOS. We've got our Android on the right-hand side there, and it is running, well, the Android operating system. Do want to kind of mention the settings here. If we go to settings, all right, and you can see right here we have mail, and I tell you what, let me see if I can make that a little bit bigger. It looks like that's a little hard to see here. See if we can increase the resolution size there. There we go. And we can see right here, you know, if I select mail, this is going to give us our mail settings, right? And we can see some general settings, right, about signature, if you will. But what I'm really worried about more than anything is I want to see this add account. Notice the add account here. Now this is where they talk about your integrated commercial provider email. And I can choose add account, and look, we've got some different things that we can do, right? We can do iCloud. iCloud's great for data synchronization as well. Comes to data synchronization, iCloud can do things like your contacts, programs, if you think of iTunes, right? Not only your email, pictures, music, your video, calendars, and bookmarks. It's a great thing to have for iCloud. We can do Exchange here as well. You know, if we ended up using Exchange, we could, whatever your corporate your corporate account is, you would log into that.
That's a fun one to set up.
Yeah, right. And then it shows you what the device ID is too for just authenticating the device, right? Google, let me cancel that out here. I'll tell you what, we'll go ahead and we use Outlook 365 here at IT Pro TV. So I'll see if I can't set up real quick my my own email. So we'll do Wes at itpro.tv and we'll choose next. Oh, and you know, it's not going to let me, it says it doesn't exist. Okay, so it's not going to let me do that with a commercial. That might actually, you know what's interesting is that might actually be the Exchange. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and do, like I said, it gets a little tricky because Microsoft likes to change names of their product there. So itpro.tv, and I might just call that, we'll just call it Exchange, see if it verifies it. Right, all right, now if we could just take a look, take away from the camera here, I'm going to type in a password. I certainly don't want people out there seeing my password, so we'll go ahead and I'll type in my password and we'll see if it is going to connect.
Password 1 is your password? Crazy.
Yeah, don't let them know that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the name of my password here. And here's where, and we can go ahead and see this. You can take a look at this. This is some of the additional information that you might have to end up putting in, the server name, right, username and password, and a description. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'll just cancel out of that, and I'm going to show you also how to log into Google. But those are some of the basic configurations. Again, you can see Yahoo here, you can see Google, Exchange, and iCloud. Now, we can also do this, you know, commercial providers as well, like, for instance, the Google with your inbox. And let me go ahead, I'll show you the Google one as well. So if I go back down to my Android device, we'll end up seeing here that I have Gmail. Now, Gmail, you have to do the same thing. You have to log in, and you can see, welcome to Gmail, and I could go through the process, right, let you get, and there's their social emails, too. So you can also do things like social media as well. Social media data can be synchronized likewise. It's one of the great things about a lot of these integrated providers. They do a lot of things at one time. We'll go ahead and choose Done here. And we'll add an email address. And here it's kind of interesting. You see a lot of the same things,
Very
right? That we see here too. So there's the Office 365, and you can see that's what we use here. And that's why I said it gets confusing. Notice we have Exchange, and we've got Outlook. But here it says Exchange and Office 365, and that's actually what we use here at IT Pro TV.
And you know what else can get confusing is a lot of these companies, Google, Yahoo, they have their own mail apps. You don't have to use the mail app that comes with the mobile device. And a lot of them, they want you to use their apps. So it's like, well, now I've got 6 different mail apps for my, you know, because I got my personal account, I got my business account, I got my sign up for stuff account, you know, that kind of thing. So it can get a little unruly after a while, but it's just rolling with the punches when it comes to mobile devices.
Yeah, most definitely. And you know, I will go ahead. Let's try to shine in a couple, because I really kind of want to show you the Office 365 as well, again, because they do call out Office and Exchange, or not Office, but Exchange and Outlook. So let me go ahead and show you that one. We'll also show you Gmail too. I'll just, like I said, when we get to the password part there, I'll probably say, hey, can we basically get away from the password there. So let me back up here and make sure I push the right one. There we go, Exchange. So my email address is wes@itpro.tv. So we'll go ahead and we will enter that, itpro.tv, and we'll choose next. Now here's where it gets tricky. This is going to be the password here. So if we can just for a second here, I just want to kind of go away from the password again because I don't want everybody knowing my password. And I'm too, I don't want to have to change it right after this episode and then constantly every day after this.
Paranoia pays in this business.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So let's see if it'll retrieve my account information. We can go ahead and show that. All right. And it says you're going to be, to configure your account, Gmail is asking to send an off. So you're going to basically be redirected here. And it's a redirection request here. All right. Now, remember we said ports. Well, we talked a little bit about ports, and you can see that right here. Notice that it's saying, hey, TLS, Transport Layer Security, as well as SSL. And again, port numbers are important, but for POP3, remember, if it asked you that, POP3 would be port 110. If it happened to be IMAP, it would be port 443. And we'll go ahead and choose no certificates here, and we'll choose and validate the server settings here. All right. And it'll go ahead, and now what it's doing is it's actually logging me over to, launching me over here to Gmail. Let's go ahead and activate that. All right, your account is set up and the email is on the way. All right, so there's one account that we have. Let's go ahead and let's get in here and let's add a Gmail account. Let's see if it'll actually log me into my Gmail account. All right, let's go ahead and we'll do a new one. All right. Oh, I do want to do an existing one here. Let's do an existing one. All right. So this one here is going to be, if I remember right, it's 220.902. And this is A+. Can't remember. You can't see what I created this account for, right? So 220.902. Oh, Alpa. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Very right, right there. A+. I'm glad I got Dan here with me to help me my spell checker. All right, and we got at gmail.com. This is why you should never, Wes should never type on camera. And here's another password here, guys. So we're going to just, if we could just steer away from that one just for a second.
Typing his password.
That's right. Nothing to see here, that's for sure.
Move along, everybody.
That's right. So as I type this, I know it's a little monotonous here, but we do want to kind of show you how to set these up. All right, and hopefully we'll go ahead and we'll choose done. And now we can go ahead and we can show the EULA on this, right? It's telling me we're going to agree to the terms and service. Hopefully I've entered that password right. If not, we're going to find out here in a second.
Couldn't sign.
Oh, it couldn't sign in. So let's go ahead and let's try that again here. And again, this is back to the whole password thing here. So if you'll just bear with me here, we're going to not show that password. I'm going to try one more time here. Again, try one more time here. And gotta love typing in passwords. Isn't this fun? We'll choose done. We'll try that one more time. And hopefully, there we go. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this too, because this also brings us into the data synchronization. Remember that I've kind of mentioned some of the data synchronization that you can do, right? We can do things like backups and restores, right? We can back up our programs to things like Google Play remembers the fact that you've purchased an application. The Google Store, or not the Google Store, I'm sorry, the App Store, iTunes, they remember the fact that you have your programs done, right? Calendars, bookmarks, music, if you're talking about iTunes, right? It's so good to have this. And this isn't something that just happens in Google. It isn't something that just happens with your iOS as well. It also happens in Windows, right? You can use your Microsoft account, right? Your Windows, it used to be called the Windows Live ID, right? And that's great, right? That's where your single sign-on is, right? They call it mutual authentication for multiple services. In this case, Gmail, Google Docs, right? Or if you're talking about iTunes, iCloud, my iPad, right? The App Store, right? Being able to synchronize all of this information across multiple services. And over here on, for instance, look, we have iBooks. once I log in if you will, once I log into things like, for instance, my iCloud, right, I can now synchronize things like ebooks, right, my PDFs, if you will, too. So a lot of good, fun things that we can do here. Now, I'll go ahead, and my head's kind of covering it up here, but now we have essentially two different service or two different accounts that are now connected via our email. And at the same time, we can do things now like data synchronization. And that is a great thing to have. It's good to be able to synchronize. Yahoo, I kind of barely mentioned Yahoo, but Yahoo also allows you to log in. It's called Ymail. Again, Yahoo also has their own likewise. All right. So those are some of the things that we have to keep in mind. Other things too, keep in mind other data synchronization types that you can do are things like, for instance, location data. Keep in mind location data, that might be a security concern for you. I'm not really sure if you're in a corporate environment, that might be a security concern for you. One of the things that, it might not be a security concern, or it could be. Let me tell you what I mean. So security concern in the fact that these third parties are tracking your information and they're scraping your data, and that might be a security concern for your corporation. The other thing is it might be a security implementation because they can do what's known as geofencing. Geofencing means that I can give you access to certain resources when you're within a certain location too. What else do we have there too, Dan? All right, so they also talk about things like updates as well, and we have to get into that likewise. Yeah, Dan, and the next, when we're talking about updates, they mention some terms in here that a lot of times we don't see, and they're really updated with just any normal software update, and that is the PRI updates, PRL updates, baseband updates. That's your preferred roaming list, right? So it's a little text database, and if I get in here into, for instance, like the settings, and I guess I got the settings up here. I can just go right here to settings. Right, your software updates that happen in things like your Android devices, you can actually do this just by going to More and then About the Device. And there's the software update option, right? Here in your iTunes, or not iTunes, excuse me, here on your iPad, you just go to Settings, and I'm kind of in there already. You might be up here in a different location. Just look at General. Right, and you can go about. You can see for instance, what is the current version of your iOS, and then if you need to do software updates, well, you just click software updates. It's letting me know, hey, we're up to date. I don't need to do anything. But those again, the PRL preferred roaming list. A lot of times we don't do any configurations to that. That just means that when I connect my phone to a CDMA network, and I go into roaming, which providers is it going to use? Again, that's why they call it the preferred roaming.
And Wes, when it comes to updates in our mobile devices, a lot of times that's kind of handled for us, right? They're automatically doing these things. Not that we wouldn't, from time to time, make sure that we have the latest updates for troubleshooting purposes. But typically, it's happening.
That's right. They're doing radio firmware as well. And you might hear the term to kind of add to what Dan, that train of thought. They're called OTA updates, right, over the air, right? Because all I do is I push software update and it does everything over. Like we think of firmware updates. I don't know about you, Dan, but when I think of firmware updates, I think of hands-on. When I update the firmware to a BIOS and a workstation or server, I'm physically touching the server, with the exception of some remote technologies. But for the most part, you're hands-on. OTA just means over the air, and that's how all of these things are pretty much going to be updated inside of your mobile operating systems. Again, remember the PRI updates, PRL updates, baseband and your radio firmware. Just like Dan said, it's bundled into everything, right? Basically, they're going to take care of that. Now, there are a couple of last little terms that I kind of want to mention. And they mention an EMEI and an IMEI. Gotta love these acronyms. And then an IMSI. Let me help you out with those since I need some help pronouncing them or saying the acronym right. The first one, IMEI. What is that? That is the International Mobile Equipment Identity. A lot of times I like to say identifier, but it's identity, right? And essentially what this is this is a number inside of your device that lets you know who the manufacturer of the device is. Think about our MAC addresses, like our MAC addresses, what does that do, right? That lets me know of the network adapter, the Ethernet adapter. It lets me know of the hardware vendor as well as the uniqueness of that adapter within the device. Well, this identifies the manufacturer of the phone as well as uniquely identifying the phone within that manufacturer. Now, the other one is the IMSI. That is the International Mobile Subscriber Identity. This is how on things like LTN networks, CDMA, GSM networks, how they, the subscriber recognizes you when you connect to their networks in the different local locations that you have. Now, I will tell you that the IMEI, I got to be careful on that one, is also the way they block devices. All right. Have you ever had to do a warranty call because maybe somebody or you've got insurance and somebody stole your device? Well, guess what? That device, once it's stolen and it's reported to the manufacturer, they use that IMEI to just basically block it off of their networks. And that helps things like fraud, right?
Well, so is that number printed on a little sticker on the inside of my battery or whatever? A lot of times you see that.
You can find it there. In fact, that's a great question. Let me show you exactly where you can find that. So going back into our device, right, we're in the About Devices here on our Android, right? I can go in here and I can look at the status, and I believe you will find it right there. Right, you can see it's just a little, I think it's 64-bit, right?
Yeah.
15 characters. I've also seen 15, the earliest standards were 15 characters, but now that you'll see that there are some that are 15 and they're 16 and 17, right? This one essentially is a 17 character number. Now I say that you're going to count these, and whoever pauses this right now, they're going to count it. And they're going to say
there's only 12.
No, they're going to say it's 15.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean there's 17? Well, they added on an extension, and sometimes you'll see that inside of the phone as well. In fact, I think I can show you here. There's another little service code, and I don't know if I can remember it.
Out there, Wes, here.
Yeah, I don't know if I can.
On your Mac.
What's that?
You're like totally.
Oh, thank you. Let's try that again so you guys can see it. I don't know if I can remember the code. Yep, there we go. Oh, and no, that's not it. That's a different signal altogether. But that is essentially where you can find that number. And when you do bring that number up, keep in mind that, again, like I said, if they ask you about it, that number uniquely identifies the device itself, portion of it identifies the manufacturer, and then this one is relatively later in that IMEI standard. That SV stands for software version. That's why originally, it would just be the 15-character number, and then they started adding a 16th character, and the 16th character would be a checksum, just verifying the whole entire number, and then eventually they added even more to that to where they could kind of tell what software version you had too. So not only could a carrier say, okay, I know who manufactured your device, I know the unique ID of the device, but I also know the software version that you're running as well. So just a way essentially to identify the device likewise too. And again, the International Mobile Subscriber Identifier or Identity is the way that the provider will identify you as you move through different locations within the various cell towers within their networks.
All right, well, very cool stuff. We've definitely gone through a lot of different aspects to our mobile devices when it comes to connectivity, synchronization, working with data, a lot of good information there. Again, the A+ exam is a very comprehensive exam, and they try to focus in on things that you're actually going to work with in real life. So even if you've never taken the exam or never take the exam, this information will serve you well as a technician if that's the field you get into. Wes, I think you did a great job of showing us all the mobile aspects that we need to know for that exam, but we are out of time for this episode. We do thank you for dropping by. We thank you for watching. Signing off for IT Pro TV, I've been your host, Daniel Lowry.
And I'm Wes Bryan.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.